Okay, so remember that they're changing my voice. So obviously there's clearly a government operation going on. Clearly they have the technology to kind of direct the fumes toward me. And so, it's very difficult to prove it. But we can't trust man to judge anyway. We see it all over the Bible that you can't trust man's judgment. You can't trust law enforcement. You can't trust the government, right? Law enforcement is an extension of the government. What have you. Look at Psalm 9, for example. It proves my point. Okay, I mean, it also Psalm 7, right, for example. Verse 10, my shield is God, the Most High, who saves the upright in heart, who saves their souls. God is a righteous judge, a God who displays his wrath, okay, every day. Let's go ahead and go to Psalm 7, verse 8. Let the Lord judge the peoples. Vindicate me, Lord, according to my righteousness, according to my integrity, O Most High. Bring an end to the violence of the wicked and make the righteous secure. You, the righteous God who probes minds and hearts. My shield is God, the Most High, who saves the upright in heart. God is a righteous judge, a God who displays his wrath every day. If he does not relent, he will sharpen his sword. He will bend and string his bow. He has prepared deadly arrows. He makes ready his flaming arrows. So not only is God described as a warrior, not a nerd, not a frat guy, not a priest, not a preacher, what have you, okay, not a scientist, but they go into detail. And we see that Judah and Ephraim in the Bible, right? Judah is called a bow and Ephraim an arrow. They're described as warriors. So they're not the black Hebrew Israelites or the Jews in Israel or anyone else. It's a certain type of martial warrior that transcends that. God would not make his people an inferior, his chosen people an inferior warrior naturally, and have them resort to sabotage and technology. That's retarded. Okay, so when we look at Psalm 9, it also proves my point. I mean, the whole Bible does, but some parts seem to make it more clear. I will give thanks to you, Lord, with all my heart. I will tell of all your wonderful deeds. My enemies turn back, they stumble and perish before you. For you have upheld my right and my cause, sitting enthroned as the righteous judge. So you see how these people, there's nothing they can say, right? The word is the spirit, but has implications on what would happen if somebody in the spirit argued their case, like we see Jesus doing in the New Testament, right? He proves his argument with logic. Okay, aren't 2 sparrows sold for a penny, and things like this, right? Why don't you judge for yourselves what is right? Oh, ye men of little faith, are you so dull? If he called them gods, the one whose scripture came through, how much more his son that he set apart? The parables is logic, right? And so when they have no counter argument to my top martial arts argument, you know that I'm of God, and they're resorting to snaking, right? To snake means to cheat, what have you. They're resorting to that type of stuff, technology, fuming, teaming up, propaganda, using the government, and everyone knows the government's corrupt, and so on and so forth. I mean, my case is open and shut here. Okay. So God upheld my cause, and he trampled theirs, and doesn't respect them, and that's pretty straightforward. You'd have to be insane not to see it. I'm not going to even tolerate a viable counter-argument, but you can put one in the comments, if you believe that you think that you have an argument. And if it has some semblance of sense to it, I guess I will tolerate it, and I'll respond to it. If it doesn't, I'll just say that's stupid, and that's that. Okay. So my enemies turn back, spiritually speaking. They stumble and perish before you. For you have upheld my right and my cause, sitting enthroned as the righteous judge. Not some partial to the Jewish people judge, not a white supremacist, but a righteous judge. Not a judge in an American court, but a righteous judge. Not these people in the the law enforcement, not the head of the police here, not the main sheriff in the Santa Clara County Sheriff Department, the righteous judge. Not the governor, not the mayor. These people turn their back on Jesus, but a righteous judge. You have rebuked the nations and destroyed the wicked. You have blotted out their name forever and ever. Endless ruin has overtaken my enemies. Endless ruin. You have uprooted their cities. Even the memory of them has perished. Even the spiritual memory. So there's no spirit outside the divine order that's of note. Okay? Their spirits are insignificant. And so even their memory, so to speak, has perished. There's no other way to interpret that. Go ahead and try. I'd love to hear your argument. If you think that, when Rome crucified Jesus, that's what they're referring to, that Romans have, magically triumphed, it's fucking retarded. Okay, so where was I? And again, Jesus is citing this by saying he's the root and offspring of David. And most of these Psalms are of David, and they all pertain to David. The Lord reigns forever. He has established his throne for judgment. He rules the world in righteousness and judges the people with equity. Notice it bothers to say he judges the people with equity. Not that the Jews are on a pedestal. He says, no, he judges them all fairly. He considers their obstacles. He considers sabotage. Those people who don't are devils. Those people are like, well, why is there always dirt in your car? Well, they don't consider sabotage and government technology. They're devils. Those who won't even entertain the thought that there might be sabotage or there might be technology that's not commonly admitted involved are fucking devils. I mean, that is pitiful. Like this 2024, not 1724. Hello, okay? This is well after they put a man on the moon. But you think they wouldn't dream of using technology to sabotage me? Have you lost your fucking minds? It was your parents that taught you to think that way? Think. Was it your churches? The Lord is a refuge for the oppressed, a stronghold in times of trouble. A refuge for the oppressed, not the oppressor. Everyone knows the government's oppressor. The churches are in bed with the oppressor. The police department, the gangs, everything you can think of but me. Everyone knows it's an oppressor. That's not your refuge. It's mine. God doesn't favor you. He favors me. Write this down if you doubt for even a moment that God is against the governments of the world and all those who take their side and gang stalk people. Psalm 9:9. The Lord is a refuge for the oppressed, a stronghold in times of trouble. Let's go down to verse 12. I'm almost out of time here. For he who avenges blood remembers. He does not ignore the cry of the afflicted. Verse 15. The nations have fallen into the pit they have dug. Their feet are caught in the net they have hidden. The Lord is known by his acts of justice. The wicked are ensnared by the work of their hands. So we see in verse 9, it says he's a refuge for the oppressed. Well, what about the nations that are oppressing people? The nations who are oppressing me. All the nations of the world. He says, are they triumphing? No. The nations have fallen into the pit they have dug. They're digging it deeper. They're dumb and dumber, digging it deeper. Their feet are caught in this net they have hidden. And they're far too dumb to appreciate that. The Lord is known by his acts of justice. The wicked are ensnared by the works of their hands. When you work in justice, you're ensnared by those works. Your hand isn't the top martial artist's hand. Your hand works in justice. Tech, breeding, cheating, and generational ill-gotten gains. The wicked go down to the realm of the dead, all the nations that forget God. To forge T, the feminine suffix, is one way to forget God, to not be in the true spirit of God, but to take on a gender-neutral spirit or Republican, trying to benefit from that. Republicans, they're also in the gender-neutral spirit. Look at the military carefully. When they make a formation, it's males and females. There's a lot of female aspects to what they're doing. I'm not trying to insult them, just trying to clarify this here. That's a feminine spirit, okay? There's a way for the military to take on the spirit of God by obeying God through me, but they're not going to do that. So they forgot God. They said, forget that. We want people to look up to white people. You see what I'm saying? Okay. But God will never forget the needy. The hope of the afflicted will never perish. Arise, Lord, do not let mortals triumph. Let the nations be judged in your presence. Strike them with terror, Lord. Let the nations know they are only mortal. So when they're waging a war on terror, and obviously there are terrorists out there and people like that, right? Are they limiting it to, Osama bin Laden types and Hamas or whoever else? Okay. They also realize that Israel's terrorizing people. Do they then include the Son of God and say, you're going to terrorize us with the truth? That's sick.